What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's been 50 years since Jaws made its way into theaters and into people's hearts, and Steven Spielberg made an awesome classic that most people didn't even think was going to work. They didn't know what they were doing at the time. This was something that was really just a true testament of filmmaking at its time, and going back to see it in theaters for the 50th anniversary was a real treat for people who obviously weren't alive during that time. Watching a movie like this, an old film, and just the way that Amblin movies were, Steven Spielberg movies were back in the day, is just really awesome to see. I had a great time seeing this theaters. I mean, man, like just the storytelling and just the raw acting and the raw special effects, and especially obviously just with Bruce the Shark and the mechanical aspect of that was just really cool. And honestly, this movie still holds up after all these years, in my opinion. It's movies like this that made movies today be able to run. And it's just a real treat. And so today we're going to just talk about what we think about this movie, what we liked about this movie, really just reliving the magic that Steven Spielberg brought to our screens. So, Roman, what did you think overall, just going back and watching this movie?
Yeah, you said it. You know, this is a Spielberg classic, and I had to spend the extra money to get the commemorative Jaws 50 cup. And if you spend it all the way around, you can see Hoover in the cage here. Just a really quality cup. But yeah, you said it. This is an absolute classic. And Steven Spielberg came on before the movie because it's the 50th anniversary to talk about it. And he said, this movie we made, I didn't think I was going to make another movie. This was his first major solo film. And he said, I didn't think it was going to lead to me having a career.
Yeah.
And because they had so many issues with the shark that they nicknamed Bruce throughout the production. He said they had so many issues with the shark and shooting because they actually shot in the ocean and on a beach, which again is a look at how filmmaking used to be. Now all that would be done on a stage.
Yeah.
And you could really feel that it was on a beach and the whole environment. And I imagine that sound mixing after the fact on a beach would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
But looking at this, and this movie has become, and you and I were talking about this after, you think about when they made this movie 50 years ago, like you said, they didn't know if it was going to go. Nobody who ever makes a movie knows if it's going to go. And not only did this become what I've been very vocal about saying I think is the greatest movie ever made. It's not my all-time favorite, but it's in the top 5. But yeah, this became, we're going to see it in theaters for the 50th anniversary. It definitely became an all-time classic. And the poster, not this one, but the classic poster became maybe the greatest poster of all time. You don't know that when you're doing it. And back then you didn't see movie posters 6 months before the movie came out on the internet. You saw it when you went to the theater to see the movie. There was the poster.
Yeah.
And this movie that was just, we didn't know if it was going to work, is 50 years later is being celebrated.
Yeah.
And that's what everyone's goal is. But you just never know. And that's the crazy thing about Hollywood. That's the crazy thing about movie magic. Spielberg said that in the opener. He said, we realized people didn't care about the issues that we had because we made it look good.
Yeah.
And this movie hit us with so many cultural touch points that we have 50 years later. Like, you're going to need a bigger boat, and the nails on a chalkboard that is used in so many movies and TV shows came from this movie.
Yeah.
And there's just so much about this. And I found myself, even though I've seen this movie countless times, during the scene where Captain Quint is telling the story of being on the USS Indianapolis, I found myself almost in a trance, like being completely transported through his story. And I'm like, this is what it's about.
No, that's a good point, Roman, because I think what makes this movie work so well is the character development side of this. I mean, obviously, like, the shark looks a little fake and that kind of thing, but they built up tension with this movie and the intensity of the shark and the horror of the shark because of how the characters felt and what was going on in Amity and how the stories of the captain and that kind of thing. And I think that's what's so beautiful about this movie is that you see the shark from the perspective of the people, even though the name is Jaws and the shark is like the main character, like you see it from their different perspectives. And I even said to you, I think I love that even Roy Scheider, like his character Brody, like you don't even really get to know his backstory and why he's scared of the water other than the one time when they're on the boat, he lifts up his shirt and you see the scar and you realize he had a shark attack when he was a kid. And so I think that's the beauty of this is how they kind of just frame all these different people's perspectives and the horror of what that shark is doing to their livelihoods. Even though this movie is 50 years old, I was kind of tense that whole time. And we even both jump scared when they went and like found the abandoned boat and the head popped out.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, like this movie still just holds the weight that it had 50 years ago. And that's what I really love about it.
You know, and that was one of those things where, as you mentioned, the shark looked a little bit fake, but the way they shot it, like you didn't really get too many looks at the shark. And even when you did, you either got his underbelly or you got like from the mouth to the neck or whatever. The only time, and I remember I thought this in the movie, the only time where I was like, oh, that looks kind of fake is when they pulled all the way out when he jumps onto the boat and is like half on the boat. So you see all of him really for the first time.
Yeah.
And he's like bent over the edge. That's the only time that I was like, oh, it looks kind of fake. Not even like really fake.
No, it looked pretty good.
Yeah. And then when he goes all the way on the boat and you get the close up with where he devours Captain Quint, that still looked pretty freaking good.
Well, they had so much going on with the blood from Quint and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, it reminds me, because obviously they did this at Universal Studios, but they had the backlot ride where the shark comes out of the water. And even then it looked pretty real. So it's cool how like this just inspired so much just practical filmmaking moving forward. We can't forget John Williams' music. I said in the middle of this movie, like obviously John Williams is the king of the scores. And all of his music is so unique for each movie, but it all still can tie together too, because there's parts of the music that sounds like, oh, that could be in Star Wars, or that could be in Indiana Jones, or whatever it is. And I love that there's just such iconic feelings that come from his music in movies like this.
I would go so far as to say it's John Williams and Hans Zimmer, and then everybody else.
Yeah,
in terms of scores and music.
100%.
I always view this as possibly the greatest movie ever made. And you mentioned because of the practical effects, because of the movie magic that had to be done. Now these days, everything's on a stage, everything's CGI, so there's not as much to be done in terms of on the set. Yeah. Christopher Nolan is still one that does things practically. I always go back to the Inception spinning hallway. They built a spinning hallway. Yeah. And so that's what I think about when I say it's the greatest movie ever made, because they had this mechanical shark that was giving them issues, because they shot in the ocean, because they shot on a boat. Yeah. And it was like all these difficulties that they went through to make this look good. Yeah. And like Steven Spielberg said, you look at that shark and you'd never know they had all these issues with it because it looked so good. But this was probably a top 5 theater experience for me, because it was a movie that I've loved for a long time. Never got to see it in theaters, and finally getting to experience it. And we talked about before the movie that so many movies now for their anniversaries are going to theaters. And that's one trope. That's one movie trope and thing that's happened that I agree with. You know, we've seen so many things and I'm like, they need to stop making these vampire movies or splitting movies into 2 things that get really tired.
Well, it just proves that people want to go see that type of filmmaking, that type of storytelling, and it never gets old. So
a couple of the things that we saw in theaters were Apollo 13 coming back to theaters,
Back to the Future
coming back to theaters, and it's like, we might have to go see those. So that's the point. It's like, I'm so glad they did this. They announced this months ago, and I texted you and I said, we're going. Yeah. This was a great experience.
Well, we'd love to know what you think out there about this movie. Did you go see it for its 50th anniversary? Let us know in the comments what your experience was like, or what you think about this movie as a whole.
Were you there the first time? Let us know in the comments.
Were you there the first time? We saw tons of people in there that definitely were there the first time, and it's really cool to see them go back and watch this movie. So please like this video and subscribe to our channel. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you don't miss another movie review from us. But until next time, we are Fandom Fix.